On a quiet, dimly lit road in Lagos, Aisha Bello, a struggling woman barely surviving on daily wages, spotted a stranded pregnant woman clutching her stomach in pain beside a broken-down car. Her face drenched in sweat, her voice shaking with fear. Aisha had nothing. No money, no car, no influence. But something in her refused to walk away. She stepped closer as the pregnant woman cried out that she was due for delivery, and the hospital was still far away. With no help in sight and time running out, Aisha made a risky choice. She helped the stranded pregnant woman through the pain, staying by her side when no one else would. But what Aisha didn't know was that this stranded pregnant woman was not just anyone. Because somewhere across Lagos, a powerful man was searching, a man whose name could open doors or shut them forever. And before the night ended, everything changed overnight. But who was this pregnant woman really? And why was she alone on that dark road? Who was the powerful man searching for her? And what would happen when he discovers who helped his wife? And how could one act of kindness from a poor woman change her life forever? Overnight? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. Aisha Bello had learned the hard way that life in Lagos did not forgive weakness. The evening air was thick and humid as she walked along the quiet roadside, her worn slippers dragging against the uneven ground. The faint sound of distant traffic echoed from the main road, but here, the street was almost empty, just flickering streetlights and silence. Her body ached from a long day of work. She had spent over 12 hours selling food by the roadside, standing under the scorching sun, calling out to customers who barely noticed her. Some days were better than others, but today had been slow. Very slow. She reached into her small bag and counted the money again, even though she already knew it wouldn't be enough. A few crumpled Naira notes stared back at her, barely enough to cover food, let alone rent. Aisha sighed deeply. This wasn't the life she had imagined. Years ago, she had dreams, simple dreams, a small shop of her own, a stable home, maybe even children running around, filling the silence with laughter. But those dreams had slowly faded, especially after Aisha Bello walked out of her life. At first, she didn't believe it. Aisha had promised her everything: love, stability, a future. But promises didn't mean much when reality came knocking. When money became tight and responsibilities grew heavier, Aisha disappeared. No warning, no explanation, just gone. Aisha had waited for him, hoping he would return, hoping it was all a mistake. But days turned into months, and hope turned into survival. She lost their small apartment shortly after. Since then, life had been a constant struggle, moving from one place to another, taking whatever job she could find, doing whatever it took to make it through each day. And tonight felt no different. The road ahead stretched into darkness as she adjusted the scarf on her head and kept walking. This shortcut was risky, especially at night, but it saved her transport fare. She had no choice. Then she noticed something unusual. A car. It was parked awkwardly by the roadside, its hazard lights blinking weakly in the dimness. Aisha slowed her steps slightly, her eyes narrowing. Cars broke down all the time in Lagos. It wasn't unusual, but something about this one felt different. Then she heard it. A faint cry. Aisha froze. She turned her head slowly toward the car, her heart beginning to beat faster. Another cry followed, louder this time, filled with pain. A woman's voice. Aisha hesitated. Her first instinct was to keep walking. Trouble was something she couldn't afford. Lagos, getting involved in the wrong situation could bring problems. Police issues, false accusations, or worse. She tightened her grip on her bag and took a step forward, ready to ignore it. But then the cry came again. "Help me. Please." Aisha stopped. Her chest tightened. That voice, it wasn't just pain. It was fear. Real fear. She closed her eyes briefly, battling with herself. "This is not your problem. You don't have anything to offer. Just go." But her feet refused to move. Slowly, almost against her will, she turned back and walked toward the car. As she got closer, she could see a figure inside. A woman bent forward, one hand gripping the seat, the other pressed against her stomach. Pregnant. Heavily pregnant. Aisha's breath caught. The woman looked up, her face pale and covered in sweat, her eyes wide with desperation. "Please," she whispered weakly, "my baby. I think it's time." Aisha felt panic rise instantly. "No, this can't be happening," she muttered under her breath. She had never done anything like this before. She wasn't a nurse. She didn't even know the first thing about childbirth. I don't know how to help you," Aisha said honestly, her voice trembling. The woman suddenly reached out and grabbed her hand tightly. "Please don't leave me," she begged, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I can't do this alone." Aisha froze. Those words hit deep. "Don't leave me." For a brief moment, everything around her faded. She was no longer on that dark roadside. She was standing in the doorway of her old apartment, watching Tunde walk away, her voice breaking as she begged him to stay. But he didn't. He left her alone. Just like that. Aisha blinked, snapping back to the present. She looked at the pregnant woman again, really looked this time. This woman was alone, helpless, terrified, and in that moment, Aisha made her decision. "I'm here," she said firmly, squeezing the woman's hand. "I won't leave you." The woman let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her face. Aisha quickly opened the car door. "Okay, we need to get you out," she said, trying to stay calm. "I can't," the woman cried, shaking her head. "You can." Aisha insisted gently. "I will help you." Carefully, she wrapped her arm around the woman and guided her out of the car. The woman winced in pain, gripping Aisha tightly as another contraction hit. "Ah! It's coming!" she screamed. Aisha's heart pounded. "Breathe! Breathe!" Aisha said, even though her own breathing was uneven. They moved slowly, step by step, until they reached a slightly clearer spot by the roadside. Aisha looked around desperately. No cars, no people, no help. Just silence. Fear crept into her chest. What if something goes wrong? What if she dies? What if the baby? Another loud cry shattered her thoughts. "It's happening now!" the woman shouted. Aisha swallowed hard. There was no time left, no time to think, no time to be afraid. She dropped to her knees beside the woman, her hands shaking. "Okay, listen to me," Aisha said, trying to sound stronger than she felt. "You're not alone. I'm here." The woman nodded weakly, tears streaming down her face. Aisha had nothing, no training, no experience, no support. But in that moment, she gave everything she had. And as the night deepened, something unseen began to shift. Because far away, in a luxurious office in Victoria Island, a man paced back and forth, his phone pressed tightly to his ear. His face was tense. His voice was cold. "Find her," Chief Emeka Okafor said sharply. I don't care how, just find my wife." Back on that quiet roadside, Aisha had no idea. No idea that the woman she was helping was connected to a man of immense power. No idea that this moment, this single act of kindness, would change her life forever. All she knew was this: she chose to stay. The night pressed in around them, thick and unrelenting, as Aisha Bello knelt on the cold roadside, her heart pounding louder than the distant hum of Lagos traffic. Chioma Okafor screamed again, her fingers digging into Aisha's arm as another wave of pain hit her body. I can't do this," Chioma cried, her voice breaking under the weight of fear. "Yes, you can," Aisha said quickly, even though doubt flickered inside her. "You have to. Your baby needs you." The words came out stronger than she felt, but something about this moment demanded strength, even if she had to force it. Aisha quickly spread her wrapper on the ground, helping Chioma lower herself onto it as gently as possible. Her mind raced wildly, searching for anything she had ever heard about childbirth. Fragments of memory came back, stories from older women in her neighborhood, bits of advice overheard in passing conversations. "Just breathe. Push when it comes," Aisha whispered, unsure but determined. Chioma shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "My husband. He was supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be alone." Aisha paused for a split second. "Husband?" But there was no time to think about that. "Focus on your baby," Aisha said firmly. "We will talk about everything later." Another contraction hit. Chioma screamed, her body tensing as she clutched Aisha's hand. "Push," Aisha said, her voice rising with urgency. The air felt heavier now, charged with tension and something deeper, something almost fateful. Aisha's hands trembled as she tried to guide Chioma, her eyes wide with fear and determination. Sweat trickled down her forehead, her breath uneven. Minutes felt like hours. The cries, the pain, the urgency, it all blurred together into one intense moment. Then, a sound. A small, fragile cry broke through the night. Aisha froze. For a second, everything went silent in her mind. Then it hit her. "The baby," she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. The cry came again, stronger this time, alive. Aisha let out a shaky breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "You did it," she said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "Your baby is here." Chioma collapsed back, exhausted, tears rolling down her face, not from pain this time, but relief. "My baby," she whispered weakly. Aisha carefully wrapped the newborn with part of her scarf, her movements gentle despite her inexperience. Her hands were still shaking, but her focus was sharp. She placed the baby gently in Chioma's arms. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The noise of the city faded. The darkness felt less heavy. It was just the two women, and a new life. Chioma looked down at her child, her face softening as she held the baby close. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Aisha nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "It's okay. You're safe now." But even as she said those words, she knew they weren't completely true. They were still on the roadside, still exposed, still vulnerable. "We need to get you to the hospital," Aisha said quickly, snapping back to reality. "You and the baby both need proper care." Chioma nodded weakly. Aisha stood up and looked around desperately. Still nothing, no cars, no people, just silence. Her heart sank. Then suddenly, headlights. Bright lights cut through the darkness in the distance. Aisha's eyes widened. A convoy of black SUVs sped toward them, their movement sharp and purposeful. Her heart skipped. This wasn't normal. As the vehicles approached, They slowed down abruptly, tires crunching against the gravel. Doors flew open. Men stepped out, well-dressed, alert, their movements precise. Security. Aisha instinctively stepped back, her heart racing again. One of the men rushed forward, his eyes scanning the scene before landing on Kioma. "Madam!" he shouted, his voice filled with urgency. Kioma looked up weakly, her expression shifting instantly. Relief. "You found me," she whispered. Aisha blinked, confusion washing over her. What was going on? Another man opened the back door of one of the SUVs, quickly preparing space. "Careful," Aisha said as they moved toward Kioma. "She just gave birth." But before she could finish, a tall figure stepped out of the last vehicle. Everything changed. The air shifted. Even the men seemed to straighten instinctively. The man walked forward with calm authority, his presence commanding without effort. His eyes locked onto Kioma. "Kioma," he said, his voice controlled but heavy with emotion. Kioma's eyes filled with tears again. "Emeka." Aisha's breath caught. This was him, the husband. But this wasn't just any man. There was something about him, something powerful, something intimidating. Chief Emeka Okafor. Aisha didn't need anyone to tell her. She could see it, feel it. He moved quickly to Kioma's side, kneeling beside her without hesitation. His gaze softened as he looked at the baby. "Our child," he murmured. Then his eyes shifted to Aisha, sharp, observant, measuring. Aisha felt a chill run down her spine. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Kioma reached for Aisha's hand again. "She saved me," Kioma said weakly. "If not for her, I don't know what would have happened." Emeka's expression changed. The intensity in his eyes softened slightly, replaced by something else. Gratitude. He stood up slowly, his gaze still fixed on Aisha. "You helped my wife?" he asked. Aisha swallowed, suddenly aware of her worn clothes, her trembling hands, her entire situation. I just did what I could," she said quietly. Emeka nodded once, as if processing her words. But there was something deeper in his gaze now, something thoughtful. "You stayed," he said. It wasn't a question. Aisha hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." A brief silence followed. Then Emeka turned to his men. "Get them to the hospital, now." They moved quickly, carefully helping Kioma into the SUV with the baby. Everything was happening so fast. Aisha stepped back, unsure of what to do. This wasn't her world. She had done her part. She should leave. But just as she turned slightly, "Wait." Emeka's voice stopped her. Aisha froze. Slowly she turned back to face him. He stepped closer, his presence still commanding, but no longer as cold. "What is your name?" he asked. "Aisha," she replied softly. "Aisha Bello." He nodded. "Aisha Bello," he repeated, as if committing it to memory. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a card, handing it to her. "Come to this address tomorrow," he said. Aisha hesitated, staring at the card. It's not necessary," she began. "It is," Emeka interrupted calmly. Their eyes met. There was no arrogance in his tone, just certainty. Aisha slowly took the card. Her fingers brushed against his briefly, and she quickly pulled back. "Thank you," he said. Simple, direct, but heavy with meaning. Aisha didn't know what to say. Before she could respond, he turned and walked back to the SUV. Within seconds, the convoy was moving again, disappearing into the night as quickly as it had arrived. Silence returned. Aisha stood alone on the roadside once more, but everything felt different. She looked down at the card in her hand. Her heart began to race again. What just happened? And more importantly, what would happen tomorrow? Aisha Bello barely slept that night. The events replayed in her mind over and over again. The stranded pregnant woman, the pain, the fear, the baby's first cry, and then the sudden arrival of those black SUVs. And him, Chief Emeka Okafor. Even now, just thinking about his presence made her uneasy. Men like him didn't exist in her world. They were the kind of people you heard about on the news, the kind whose names opened doors, whose influence shaped lives from a distance. People like Aisha didn't cross paths with people like that, not unless something unusual had happened. And something unusual had happened. She turned over on her thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling of her small room. The faint hum of a generator outside filled the silence. In her hand, she still held the card. She had looked at it at least 100 times already. The address printed on it was unmistakable: Victoria Island, a place far removed from her reality, a place of wealth, power, and privilege, a place she had never stepped foot in. Her fingers tightened slightly around the card. "Come tomorrow," he had said. Simple, direct. But why? That question refused to leave her mind. Was it just to say thank you? Or was there something more? Aisha sighed and sat up slowly, rubbing her face. What if it's a mistake? She whispered to herself. What if she goes there and they turn her away? What if she doesn't belong? The doubt crept in quickly, wrapping itself around her thoughts like a shadow. But then another voice pushed through. What if this is the moment everything changes? She stared at the card again. Everything changed overnight. Those words echoed in her mind, sending a strange feeling through her chest. By morning, Aisha had made her decision. She was going. Even if it led to nothing, she needed to know. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. The sun rose over Lagos with its usual intensity, flooding the streets with life and noise. Hawkers called out to passers-by, buses honked loudly, and the city moved at its usual relentless pace. But for Aisha, everything felt different. She had taken extra time to prepare, carefully washing her only good outfit, a simple but neat dress. It wasn't much, but it was the best she had. She tied her scarf neatly, took a deep breath, and stepped out. The journey to Victoria Island felt like crossing into another world. The roads became smoother, the buildings grew taller. The air itself seemed different, cleaner, quieter, more controlled. Aisha clutched the card tightly as she approached the address. Her steps slowed. In front of her stood a massive gate guarded by uniformed security officers. Beyond it, she could see a large compound. Luxurious, intimidating, nothing like anything she had ever known. Her heart began to race. What am I doing here? For a moment, she considered turning back. But then she remembered Kioma's face, her voice, her words. She saved me. Aisha took a deep breath and stepped forward. One of the guards looked at her immediately. Yes? What do you want? He asked, his tone firm. Aisha hesitated, then held out the card with slightly trembling hands. I was asked to come here, she said quietly. The guard glanced at the card, then at her. His expression changed almost instantly. He picked up his radio and spoke briefly. A few seconds later, the large gate began to open. Aisha's eyes widened. She was being allowed in. Her heart pounded harder with every step as she walked into the compound. The ground beneath her feet felt too smooth, too clean. Everything around her screamed wealth, order, power. A man approached her from the main building, too well-dressed and composed. "Miss Aisha Bello?" he asked politely. She nodded. "Please, come with me." Aisha followed him, her eyes taking in everything, the polished floors, the elegant furniture, the quiet atmosphere. It felt unreal. They stopped in a large sitting room. "Please wait here," the man said before leaving. Aisha stood awkwardly, unsure of where to sit or what to touch. Moments later, footsteps echoed from the hallway. She turned, and there he was, Chief Emeka Okafor. He walked in with the same calm authority she remembered, his presence filling the room effortlessly. But this time, there was something different. He looked less distant. "Good morning, Aisha," he said. His voice was steady, controlled, but not cold. "Good morning, sir," she replied quickly, lowering her gaze slightly. He studied her for a moment. "You came," he said. Aisha nodded. "Yes, sir." A brief silence followed, then he gestured toward a seat. "Sit." She hesitated, then slowly sat down, her back straight, her hands resting nervously in her lap. Emeka remained standing for a moment before finally speaking again. "My wife and child are stable," he said. "The doctors confirmed that if you had not helped her when you did, things could have been very different." Aisha felt a small wave of relief wash over her. "That's good to hear," she said softly. Another pause. Then Emeka stepped closer. "I have people," he continued. "Security, drivers, staff, but none of them were there when my wife needed help." His gaze locked onto hers. "You were." Aisha didn't know how to respond. She shifted slightly in her seat. "I just did what anyone would do," she said. Emeka shook his head slightly. "No," he said calmly. "Not everyone would have stayed." Those words settled heavily in the room. Aisha looked down at her hands. She didn't feel special. She didn't feel brave. She had just acted. Emeka watched her for a moment longer before reaching into his pocket. Aisha's heart skipped. Was he about to give her money? Her chest tightened slightly. She didn't want to feel like she had helped for a reward, but instead of handing her cash, he placed something else on the table. A set of documents. Aisha looked at them, confused. "I made some inquiries this morning," Emeka said. Her heart began to beat faster. "Inquiries?" she repeated. He nodded. "You work long hours. You earn very little, and you have no stable support system." Aisha froze. How did he know all that? A flicker of discomfort passed through her. Emeka noticed. "Don't misunderstand," he added. "I believe in knowing the people I trust." Trust? That word caught her off guard. He continued. "You helped my family at their most vulnerable moment. That is not something I take lightly." Aisha's breath slowed slightly, but the tension remained. "What does this mean?" she asked carefully. Emeka pushed the document slightly closer to her. "This is an offer," he said. Aisha hesitated before picking them up. Her eyes scanned the first page, then widened. It was a job offer, a real job, stable income, accommodation, benefits she had never even imagined. Her hands began to shake slightly. I don't understand," she said. "You will," Emeka replied calmly. "Take your time." Aisha looked up at him, her mind spinning. Why would he do this? Why her? "I'm not qualified for something like this," she said honestly. Emeka's expression didn't change. "Kindness is a qualification many people fail," he said. "You did not." Those words hit differently. Aisha swallowed hard. Her life, her struggles, everything she had endured. Could it really change just like that? Overnight? Her grip tightened on the papers, but deep inside, another question began to form. What comes with accepting this kind of offer? Because in her experience, nothing truly came without a cost. Aisha looked up at Emeka again, uncertainty filling her eyes, and in that moment she realized this wasn't just an opportunity, it was a turning point, one that could change everything, for better, or for something she wasn't yet ready to face. Aisha Bello sat quietly in the large, unfamiliar room, the documents still resting in her hands, as if they carried a weight far beyond paper. Her eyes moved slowly across the pages again, but the words no longer felt distant or confusing. They felt real. Too real. A job, a stable income, accommodation, a future. Everything she had struggled for, laid out in front of her. Overnight. Her fingers tightened slightly as her mind drifted back to where she had been just yesterday, standing under the harsh sun, calling out to customers who barely looked her way, counting crumpled naira notes that were never enough. And now this. It didn't feel possible. It didn't feel like her life. She slowly lifted her gaze to Chief Emeka Okafor, who stood across from her, calm and unreadable as always. "Why me?" she asked quietly. It wasn't fear in her voice. It was something deeper, a need to understand. Emeka didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the large window, his hands behind his back as he looked out over the city. "For a long time," he began, his voice steady, "I believed that everything could be controlled, that with enough power, enough resources, nothing would be left to chance." He paused briefly. "But last night proved me wrong." Aisha listened closely, her heart steady but attentive. "My wife," he continued, "had access to the best hospitals, the best doctors, the best security. Yet when she needed help the most, none of that mattered." He turned slightly, his gaze finding hers again. "You were the only one there." Silence settled between them. Aisha looked down again, her thoughts shifting. "I didn't do it for anything," she said softly. "I just couldn't walk away." Emeka nodded once. "I know." Another pause. Then he stepped closer again, his tone firm but not forceful. "That is exactly why you are here." Aisha's chest tightened slightly. She understood his words, but something still held her back. Her past, her fears, the life she had known for so long. "What if I fail?" she asked suddenly. The question surprised even her. Emeka didn't hesitate. "Then you learn," he replied calmly. "And you continue." Aisha blinked. That wasn't the answer she expected. No pressure, no threats, just certainty. She looked back at the documents one more time. This was more than just a job. It was a chance she had never been given before. Slowly, she took a deep breath. Then she nodded. "I'll do it," she said. The words felt strange at first, but then something shifted inside her. Something stronger, something new. For the first time in a long time, Aisha felt like she was stepping toward something, not just surviving. Emeka gave a small nod, as if he had expected nothing less. "Good," he said simply. The days that followed were unlike anything Aisha had ever experienced. Everything changed. Just like that. Overnight. She moved into a clean, comfortable apartment provided by the company. It wasn't extravagant, but to Aisha, it felt like a palace compared to where she had come from. For the first time in years, she slept without worrying about rent, without worrying about tomorrow. Her new job was challenging, but not impossible. She was trained patiently, guided step by step, and slowly, she began to adapt. At first, she felt out of place. The environment, the people, the expectations. It all felt like too much. But each day she grew stronger, more confident, more certain. And then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. She was called to the main house. Her heart raced slightly as she walked in, memories of that first visit flooding back. But this time it felt different, familiar, warm. She was led into a quiet room, and there, sitting comfortably with a baby in her arms, was Kioma Okafor, healthy, radiant, alive. "Aisha," Kioma said with a bright smile. Aisha's face lit up instantly. "Madam," she said softly, stepping closer. "No," Kioma said gently. "Call me Kioma." Aisha hesitated, then nodded. Kioma looked down at the baby and then back at Aisha. "Come," she said, motioning for her to step closer. Aisha did. Her eyes softened as she looked at the child, the same child she had helped bring into the world on that dark roadside. "You saved us," Kioma said quietly. Aisha shook her head. "No, I just helped." Kioma smiled. "And that is exactly what makes it so important." She gently placed the baby into Aisha's arms. Aisha froze for a moment, her breath catching slightly as she held the child. So small, so fragile, so full of life. Emotion filled her chest in a way she couldn't explain. "This is your impact," Kioma said softly. Aisha looked down at the baby, her eyes glistening. For so long, her life had felt meaningless. Just survival, just getting through each day. But now she could see it. Her choice that night. Her decision to stay. It had mattered. More than she ever imagined. Weeks later, as Aisha stood outside her new apartment, watching the Lagos sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, she allowed herself a quiet moment. A moment to reflect. Everything had changed, but not just her circumstances. Her. She was no longer the same woman who walked that dark roadside, tired and defeated. She was stronger, braver, hopeful, and it all started with one simple choice: to stay, to help, to care. A soft breeze passed, and Aisha closed her eyes briefly, a small smile forming on her lips. Life had not just changed overnight. It had revealed something deeper, that even in the darkest moments, one act of kindness could rewrite an entire story. And somewhere in Lagos, in a world that often overlooked people like her, Aisha Bello was no longer invisible. She was seen. She was valued. She was changed. Forever. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. Thank you.